Our next group is a powerhouse of women that are doing amazing work. I look up to each and every single one of them. In the midst of the truth, which can sometimes be very overwhelming, they are finding solutions and cultivating hope. And today they're going to be talking about solutions for the plastic problems that we are enduring globally. So without further ado, please help me to introduce them one by one. They'll be interviewed by NBC's climate reporter, Chase Kane. You guys all know Chase, hopefully, at this point. He is an amazing interviewer, so very, very excited that he'll be facilitating this for us. We'll also be introducing to the stage founder of Brown Girl Green, Christy Dirtman. Co-founder and CEO of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, Deanna Cohen. And director and co-founder of the Plastics and Climate Project, Holly Hoffman.
Sorry to walk in front of you.
No, please. And I will slide this over so no one thinks that it's yours.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I feel like I had to bring a
really
plastic water bottle out, especially for this conversation.
Small for this couch.
Very excited to have this conversation with the three of you because I would venture to guess that, is there anyone in the room that thinks that plastic is good and that we don't have a plastic problem? Right? Like, we all see it on, exactly. It's like, where? Yeah, I mean, like, we see it on the side of our roads. Like, we see it on the beach. Like, we know about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is largely plastic floating in our ocean. I think we understand that plastic is a problem, but Holly, you're actually we're learning that it is more than we even understand right now.
That is true. So, hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Holly. And so one thing that what you said makes me think of is that some definitions are important. There's a big difference between plastic waste and plastic pollution. Plastic waste is what is visible to us, right? It's what's been discarded, is at least how we think of it at the Plastic and Climate Project. Whereas plastic pollution is climate, health, justice. It's pollution and problems throughout the entire life cycle of plastics, which is a life cycle that never ends, because this is a material that nature cannot absorb and essentially lasts forever. So
it certainly lasts longer than our human lives, right? And
right.
So, I think even, like, I have a metal water bottle that I use every single day, and sometimes we find ourselves in situations where out of convenience we go and grab one of these, not really thinking about it, but like, this is going to outlive all of us.
Absolutely. And something like a candy bar wrapper or something you use for even less time. So even though I want to bring up the problem of climate, the climate impacts of plastics, I will say that one important solution is to match the lifetime of the material with the use, at least until we have more substitutes for things like airplane parts or heart valves or things that things that you want to have be durable, but for things that just last for a few minutes, that you just use for a few minutes, absolutely shouldn't be made out of plastic.
Okay, so plastic pollution, this is plastic waste. We could say it's also plastic pollution, but plastic pollution, you're talking about chemically, atmospherically, gases. Like, what are we learning that we did not recently know about
right.
plastic?
So I'm going to talk about the climate pollution, and my friends here are going to talk about some other aspects of the pollution. So it's been very uplifting here at this conference to hear so many people who are so confident about the transition to renewable energy and regenerative agriculture, and how renewable energy is scaling to a point now where it's going to be like Kodak and just kind of go the way of the dinosaur because other better things have taken its place. Well, let me say, the fossil fuel industry is clever, and there's a game of whack-a-mole going on. So what the fossil fuel industry is doing now is vastly expanding its plastics and petrochemical production. They plan on tripling production by 2050. And here's a soundbite, a takeaway for everybody here. Even if we stopped all plastic production, use, and waste today, many of the climate impacts of plastics would not only continue, but continue to increase. So what my organization did, the Plastics and Climate Project, is we spent 2 years looking at close to 6,400 peer-reviewed papers on the climate impacts of plastics. So we know what scientists know and what scientists don't yet know, the data that we need to fill in. So
And you're finding that it's essentially like they're contributing to the warming beyond just the trash on the side of the road.
you have it exactly. Plastic is exacerbating all the planetary boundaries, to talk about the Rockstrom framework, and I will focus on the climate one. So plastics have 3 categories of climate impacts, and the first one is greenhouse gases, which is the one most of us think about. Right now, with only the greenhouse gas emissions that are counted for the plastics industry, if the plastics industry were a country, it would be, depending whose numbers you use, the 4th or 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. And we know that we're undercounting that. So we have numbers for the beginning of extracting the fossil fuels and manufacturing plastic and certain types of waste management like incineration. We have almost no data about all the greenhouse gases from transporting, from import and export, and from use. If this building is insulated with foam insulation, there are F gases being constantly emitted. None of that is counted. There's also very little data on greenhouse gases from the unmanaged waste phase. So when you see plastic just laying around and it starts to break down, et cetera, well, the scientists who discovered that once a plastic garbage bag, like a polyethylene bag, if it's been hit by sunlight once, it starts to degrade. It breaks into microplastics. And what happens? It emits methane and other greenhouse gases. So we need some numbers on that because there's a lot of polyethylene and other plastics degrading in the environment.
And just to jump in, Holly, because I feel like you're telling me that it's even worse than I imagined.
You're right.
And yet we still, we knew that plastic was bad. We didn't do anything. We learned that plastic is even worse. We're still not doing anything. We learned that plastic is inside our brains and our organs. So Dion, I'm gonna ask you the unenviable question. How do we break this cycle of it's bad, we learn that it's even worse, and we're still not making that meaningful action?
Yeah, that's the big money question. Look, plastic pollutes all living things on the planet, from extraction through manufacturing, use, end of life, all different forms of incineration, as Holly mentioned, and it exacerbates and contributes to climate change. But at the same time, we are surrounded by solutions. To me, I've always looked at this work I've been doing it, we co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition back in 2009. I'll talk about that image in a second, but we co-founded the group in 2009, and our focus and our goal was to stop plastic pollution and to stop its toxic impact. So the question is, how do we do that? And there are many different fronts that we need to work on simultaneously, as many of these problems, including climate, are complex. But there are solutions and they're all around us. I don't mean to be like, oh yeah, but this is my Wawa. I have a steel cup and I just carry it with me everywhere. I use it on trains, I use it on planes, I keep it in the car. I get discounts whenever I go to coffee places by using it, and it's really simple. It's a really simple solution. I've invested in that, and I've made a commitment personally to use it, and I find that there are lots of carrots and benefits to that small behavior change I've made as an individual. But we're also in the last, we're in our 16th year, but we've been changing policy, we've been changing legislation. You can do it at the city level. I remember when folks contacted us from Ketchum in 2010 and said, hey, we're starting a bag ban here in Ketchum. And I was like, that's awesome. How did you figure out how to do that? They were like, oh, we saw it on your website, how to start a bag ban in your town. So sometimes it's something that simple, which is supporting and passing legislation and policy, but it can also be, what do you do if you're a student and you're at school? What do you do if you have a business or a company and you have employees, or you are an employee at a company? What do you do if you own a restaurant or a cafe? There are all these different levels that we can work at. And then of course there's also the litigation angle, which is quite an interesting angle, which is holding companies and corporations accountable for the plastic pollution that they are creating, and holding them accountable for the claims and the promises and the commitments that they make to change that, to be using recyclable material, different verbiage that they use. And it's actually quite interesting. I'm just gonna say this in case people here don't know, but the numbers that they put on plastic packaging, 1 through 6 or 7, actually I think 7 is other, is it 6? Yeah. 7's other. Those numbers only identify the polymer type. They only tell you what kind of plastic it is.
Even if they're in the little recycle symbol.
Yeah, well, but the recycle symbol, it's all greenwashing, basically. So those do not mean that the plastic will be recycled, that it can be recycled, or that it is being recycled. And plastic was never designed to be recycled.
But it says recycle me with a green lid.
It does.
Yeah.
Deanna?
It
does.
does.
Oh.
And recycling is another form of plastic production. And it also, if you think of all the washing and grinding and shredding and repelletizing that goes into recycling plastic, that's creating a bunch of microplastics that get into air and water that create some of the climate problems. Because the other two categories that I didn't mention just briefly is one, plastics are harming the capacity of our natural carbon sinks to do that job of sequestering carbon. And they're affecting the reflectivity of the Earth, which I can get more into later. But
We'll have a side talk on the
We'll
albedo
do
of
that.
Earth, because I'm as we have this conversation, Christy, I think that we're ultimately having a conversation of privilege. I think that, you know, I could certainly go spend more money on a glass bottle. Like I have a stainless steel water bottle. I was saying aluminum, but it's a stainless steel water bottle.
Which is
But
lined
there are
in
people
plastic.
who, when they're going to the grocery store, they're going to a convenience store, they're concerned about paying the bills every month, and maybe they don't have that luxury to say like, well, glass is more expensive, aluminum is more expensive. How do we have that conversation with people who are facing those kind of pressures?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be honest that like living a full-on like zero waste lifestyle can not always be the most accessible and does cost more. I actually, you know, as a content creator with my platform Brown Girl Green, I participated in Plastic Free July. And I lived in the Bay Area at the time, which was a very like plastic free friendly space. But I just wanted to see how far I could really go. I lasted like 12 days. Because I was doing everything, and I was going to this grocery store, and I was only getting stuff wrapped in paper, and you know, that could be there. But then I found out there's like specific waxes, and I learned certain jars are even lined with plastic, and it gets really complicated. And so I like to tell people, like, I think it's not realistic to have an all or nothing approach to these kinds of things, but I do like to tell people to think about the true cost behind plastic products, that like, this isn't just the plastic that you're buying, like the costs around it to your health and your well-being can have long-term impacts. And I think especially for communities, especially low-income communities, I think it's important that we are able to create those kinds of educations around like the health and safety around that, while also companies and businesses should be thinking about more cost-effective alternatives if you really want people to make the switch. I think there needs to be a balance between, yes, investment products and thinking about, you know, the cost per wear of an item or cost per use, but we also have to be realistic that that's not going to be the biggest selling point to communities that maybe don't even realize that they're being poisoned by these products. And so I've been making some content about educating my audiences about microplastics, how they could be making switches around plastic Tupperware, plastic cutting boards, and just to educate people in my community who maybe don't know about those things. And on top of that, I talk about environmental justice because I think it's a topic that's not really talked about in the plastic pollution fight, on how the production of plastic and the extraction for the materials of that is actually leading to communities, especially communities of color, to be harmed. So we're gonna play this very quick 1-minute video where I went around New York City asking people if they know where a place called Cancer Alley is, which is where a lot of plastics in the US and the world are being produced today. If we can play it, is that gonna work? Have you heard of the environmental justice crisis of Cancer Alley? Well, most people don't, so I went around New York City and asked people if they do. Check it out. Do you know where Cancer Alley is?
No.
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 If you were to guess on the map, where do you think a Cancer Alley in the US might exist?
Probably up here. Kansas.
Cancer Alley is the regional nickname for the 85-mile stretch of land along the Mississippi River from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to New Orleans. This area contains over 200 petrochemical plants and refineries, and most of the communities there are predominantly black and low income and are basically treated as sacrifice zones by a bunch of these petrochemical companies and corporations. It's estimated that 46 people per 1 million in Cancer Alley are at risk of cancer compared to the national average, which is 30 people per 1 million. We need more people to know where Cancer Alley is and to take action to support the organizations on the ground fighting against these petrochemical plants from poisoning their communities. Take action today. Yay. Yeah.
Christy, great
I love
video.
it. And so just, to finish on that point, I think we need to be creating these connections for people to educate them that like this is what's happening, but giving them actionable steps that might not cost them a ton of money. And if it does, telling them what the cost benefit analysis of that is in their everyday lives and making it simple for people. I think for those of us with the privilege and the access to fight for things like plastic bag bans, to fight for subsidizing, aluminum and glass in this country, like we need the minds in this room and everyone else needs to be fighting for those alternatives to protect our communities and to connect the dots.
And I want to make sure we didn't gloss over something here, that when we think about Cancer Alley, like this is essentially a relic of redlining, that we're putting these communities next to freeways and power plants and airports and ports and things that are polluting the air and the water,
It's a relic.
but also our health.
Yeah, as a relic of slavery and
Yes.
colonialism that's
right.
still alive and thriving today.
That's showing up with plastics in the human body, right?
Yes.
Yes, and many of the plastics and petrochemical production facilities in Cancer Alley are actually on the land that was former plantations.
But we have those areas on the whole Gulf Coast of Texas, like 60 miles of Gulf Coast in Texas. And I live in Los Angeles, and it is throughout Los Angeles, Baldwin Hills. You drive to the airport, you go through like 7 miles or something of functioning oil wells. The field at my high school had a working oil well in the corner at my high school.
Wow.
And they kind of disguise them, or they paint flowers on the outside or something, But
Green.
we took we have a project called Flip the Script on Plastics, and we took a bunch of content creators on a toxic tour with Solutions of Los Angeles. And that was really eye-opening for me as well, to learn how insidious the petrochemical industry is all around us. I was going to ask if we could go back for 2 seconds just to the other image
Yep.
that I had
Yeah,
had
we
up
do it too.
before. It's just, this is, in case anybody wants to look up at that QR code, this is if you want to help support a strong global plastic treaty. We're in the process of negotiating it again. A bunch of us are going to be in Geneva at the UN
In early August, right?
in early August. It's the beginning of August, and I was just in Korea in November last year for this as well. And we are fighting for and supporting a strong UN global plastic treaty, but there are a bunch of businesses supporting it as well. And so,
So as a call to action, if anyone does want to scan the QR code, this would be the time that you would probably want people to share it and sign in advance of that
it
negotiation.
would be good for people to sign if you're interested. And then also, we just provided some talking points that make the connection between plastic and climate and plastic and health. But it's all intertwined. And not only what Christy was saying, not only is it affecting and impacting low-income and rural communities and Black and brown communities directly on fence lines, but it also deeply affects Indigenous communities as well.
Holly, we're going to come to the jaw-dropping moment in a second. Before we pivot away from this, I want to.
remember what it is.
Oh, you will. You said something backstage about the cost of this versus the cost of this, and you used a phrase that I hadn't heard before about why people might be choosing plastic. Do you remember what that is? Artificially inexpensive?
Yeah, artificially inexpensive. Yeah, like it's the idea that the way that this is marketed is like you'll buy a 50-pack of water bottles at a Costco or whatever, and it seems like you're saving money, but it's like at the end of the day, like that keeps adding up, and then on top of that, like the potential, accumulation of chemicals and weird stuff going into your bloodstream that could lead to long-term health impacts. Obviously, that data is still being collected, and we don't even, it's going to keep getting collected over the span of our lifetimes. But I think, there's enough data out there that is showing that there is going to continue to be costs that are going to be irreversible if this continues to be what people are getting exposed to.
And so it's the two things, is that our tax dollars are being used to subsidize the oil and gas industry to make that cheaper,
Exactly.
while at the same time,
Exactly.
they're not paying for the human
No.
health costs
Well,
that we all
and that's what we were all saying before, that all of the true costs to using plastic, which is artificially inexpensive, are externalized. So the cost to our health, the cost to clean air, clean water, soil, clean soil.
And more than that, are you guys ready for what I'm about to ask,
now I know what
Holly?
you want me to say.
So we were talking about health backstage and just saying we're learning there's little pieces of plastic in our brains and in our organs and in our bodies. And you said, that's not all.
Right. So there's, and then I'll get to the other thing I was going to say. But what Chase is talking about is that there's extremely well-established science that shows that from one generation to the next, men's penises are getting smaller because of plastics. This is, oh, see? Works every time. So in terms of your storytelling, we can have you all go out there and help tell the story about how plastics are linked to health and justice and climate issues. And you can throw that fact in there and really get people's attention, and they'll probably want to switch to the metal cup.
Yeah, I mean, certainly applaud for that. I think that has everyone's attention. Because if you're having a conversation in one of these disadvantaged communities, you don't have to go to that point because they already get it. They live with
They're
the
already
impacts.
dying of
They're
cancer.
seeing their friends and family get cancer, right? So when we have these big conversations, when people who are listening to this conversation would love if all three of you could maybe give them a piece of advice, a call to action, something that they can walk out of this room and try and have an impact on this problem.
Thank you. Could you go back to the slide that has our report on it? Great. So I would love for people to learn more about the connections between plastics and climate, because we are really undercounting the climate impacts of plastics. And we need to understand what the impacts are to carbon sinks, and what's going on in the other two categories that I mentioned. So if you want to learn more about that, there's the QR code for our website that our friend Pamela Wellner has helped us with tremendously. And you can read either our peer-reviewed scientific paper or our 20-page summary report or our 2-page executive summary, and find a way to contact me. But please help, just share the story about making the links between plastics, climate, health, and justice.
Excellent. What would be, please.
I would say, everyone's welcome to utilize any of the resources that we provide on the Plastic Pollution Coalition website. We've got a healthy pregnancy guide, a healthy baby guide. Everything's downloadable for free. We've got curriculum. It's just there, and we're trying to provide the most basic how to get started, what do I do first, et cetera. And we just have a lot of resources. We have a monthly webinar series. We do a newsletter every month. Thank you. And I'm very, very proud, but I get excited every day too. Like, I'm proud of the work that we've all accomplished so far as a global coalition, but I'm also excited about what we can do, from the Global Plastics Treaty to personal moves that we can make. And some of them are very old school, so they don't also need to cost you money. You can also DIY it from home.
Yeah, I would say my last call to action, folks can follow me, Brown Girl Green, on social media, on Instagram. I don't think my handle's in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
But Brown Girl Green, you guys can check it out on social media. And I post a lot of content on the intersections on the plastic crisis and talking about different solutions related to environmental justice, especially for communities in the global south, which I know we didn't have time to talk about as much today, but I think it's important for people wherever you're at to think about the storytelling you can do in your community, at your schools, in your neighborhoods, to break down this information and to speak to the audiences that you can. Obviously, there's messengers like myself, but I think we need different folks from different types of communities to translate this information and make it palatable and accessible to your various audiences, so that way they can get activated and mobilized in a way that they can trust you and to learn about this information.
And if they want to make it their career, Christy.
Oh yeah, if you want to make it your career, you can also check out greenjobsboard.us.
Greenjobsboard.us. Greenjobsboard.us. Thank you to these wonderful panelists. I know we could certainly talk for much longer. The last thing that I will just add, for those of you that aren't aware, is that Yale and George Mason do some amazing social science research that shows that the climate deniers and the people that say these things aren't a problem is actually just 10% of the US. They just feel much louder. So don't be afraid to start a conversation and use some of the incredible advice that you've gotten from people here on the stage today.
And Christy's about to post something cool about microplastics.
So follow Brown Girl Green. I'll be posting microplastic content this week.
Holly, Deanna, Christy, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Wonderful
Chase.
conversation.
Thanks, everybody.